Have you ever wondered if there's like a formula for why a nation succeeds or fails? Well, the ancient book of Second Chronicles says there absolutely is. It's this gripping history that shows us a powerful recurring pattern, a kind of cause and effect for an entire nation. And here's the thing, it all comes down to one person, the king. So let's jump right in and unpack what this text calls the king's formula.
Okay, so right out of the gate, we get this really stark choice. This is God's warning to King Solomon right after he dedicates that magnificent temple. It's basically a divine ultimatum that sets the tone for the next 400 years of history, and the message is crystal clear. The fate of the nation, whether it thrives or it's ruined, is directly tied to the obedience and the character of its leader. And look, this isn't just some casual advice, nope. This is the fundamental rule the entire book is built on.
All right, so if that's the rule, who's the guy who actually got it right? Well, the book opens with its ideal example, the benchmark for every king that comes after him, King Solomon. He's the son of the legendary King David, and his reign kicks off as the perfect illustration of how to follow this formula for success.
Now this is a huge moment. God appears to Solomon and basically says, ask for whatever you want. What can I give you? Just imagine that. And instead of asking for money or a long life or victory over his enemies, Solomon asks for wisdom to lead his people well. God is so impressed with this totally selfless request that he not only gives him wisdom, but also throws in all the stuff he didn't even ask for. And you know what? The blessings start rolling in right away. One of Solomon's first big moves is this incredible act of worship. He offers 1,000 burnt offerings to God. And 1,000, that's not just a random number. It's a massive statement about his priorities. He's putting his relationship with God first, and that single act kicks off an era of prosperity like nobody had ever seen. As a direct result of God's favor, the kingdom's wealth becomes the stuff of legend. Get this, 666 talents of gold. And that's not a one-time thing, that's every single year. To give you some perspective, we're talking about over 25 tons of gold. That's worth well over $1 billion in today's money, just flowing into the treasury year after year. This wasn't wealth from war, it was wealth from blessing. The prosperity got so staggering that it led to this incredible quote from the text. And this isn't just, some poetic flourish. It's describing an economy that was so supercharged that a precious metal, silver, became as common as the stones you'd walk on. This is the kingdom at its absolute peak, the formula for success executed to perfection. But you know how it goes. What happens when the formula is ignored? Well, the answer comes in the very next generation. After Solomon's long 40-year reign, his son Rehoboam takes the throne. And in one of his very first acts as king, he faces this critical test that's going to show us the formula for failure with, devastating clarity. So the people come to their new king, and really, they've got a pretty fair request. Solomon's building projects were amazing, sure, but they meant heavy taxes and hard work. So the people basically say, hey, be a good king to us, ease up a little bit, and we'll serve you forever. So what do? This is the moment, right? It's going to define everything. So Rehoboam's got two groups whispering in his ear. On one side, you have the elders, the wise old guys who served his father Solomon. They tell him to be a servant leader. Their path leads to loyalty. But on the other side, his buddies, the young guys he grew up with, they tell him to project power and dominance. Theirs is a path of pure arrogance. The entire fate of the kingdom is hanging on this choice. And he makes the absolute worst choice possible. He completely rejects the wisdom of the elders and gets up in front of everybody to declare he's going to be even harsher than his father. It's this breathtakingly arrogant and foolish speech, using language of violence and oppression. He couldn't have picked worse words if he tried. And the fallout? Oh, it's instant, and it's a catastrophe. The 10 northern tribes hear what he says and basically go, that's it, we're out. They walk, and the unified kingdom of David and Solomon is shattered, and it will never be put back together again, all because of one leader's foolish pride. That's the formula for failure right there. And from this point on, the book of Second Chronicles basically just hits the repeat button. It walks us through the reigns of the kings of Judah one after another, and shows us how they either follow Solomon's first path to blessing or Rehoboam's path to total disaster. It's just this relentless, predictable pattern of cause and effect. So let's take a look at a really clear example of a leader who followed the formula for success, King Asa. He took over a kingdom that had really lost its way, and he knew exactly what needed to be done. So what does Asa do? Well, he basically starts this huge spiritual spring cleaning for the whole nation. He tears down the idols, smashes the foreign altars, and publicly calls everyone back to worshiping God. And when an army of 1 million men marches against him, he doesn't trust his own military strength. He cries out to God for help.
So what's the direct result of all this? The text is super clear about it. God gave him rest, the kingdom had peace from war, and he won this miraculous, absolutely impossible victory against that massive army. His obedience led directly to national security. Okay, so that's the good king blueprint. Now let's flip the coin and look at the total opposite. A few generations down the line, we meet King Ahaz, who is a textbook example of a leader who just actively defied the formula and embraced evil. I mean, Ahaz does the exact opposite of Asa. It's almost like a checklist of how to do everything wrong. He promotes idol worship, he engages in the horrific practice of child sacrifice, and then, in this final act of just total defiance, he literally padlocks the doors to God's temple, completely shutting God out of the nation's life. And the result? Well, it's exactly what you'd expect by now, and it's absolutely devastating. God delivers him into the hands of his enemies. The nation is brought low, suffers humiliating defeats, and endures a terrible slaughter. Unfaithful leadership leads straight to national disaster. See? The formula holds. But it's not always so simple, not so black and white. And to show us that, the book gives us the story of King Uzziah. His story is this powerful warning that even a really good and successful king can fall victim to the formula if he forgets his place. I mean, Uzziah has this incredibly long and successful reign. We're talking 52 years. He starts out great, he seeks God, and because of that, God makes him prosper. He's a brilliant military commander, a great builder, and he becomes exceedingly strong. By all metrics, he's a fantastic king. But here's the thing about success. It can be a real trap. And right there, that's the pivot point. All that strength, all that success, it just went straight to his head. His heart was lifted up, which is just biblical speak for pride. He decided being king wasn't enough. He wanted to be a priest, too. So he marches right into the holy temple to burn incense, a sacred job that was only for the priests. And the payback for this moment of pride? It's instant and it is harsh. God strikes him with leprosy. Right there in the temple, this powerful, successful king spends the rest of his life as a total outcast, cut off from the very temple he defiled and isolated from everyone. His pride led directly to his ruin. So when you take a step back and look at the whole thing, from Solomon to Rehoboam, from Asa to Ahaz and Uzziah, the message of 2 Chronicles is just screaming at you. It hammers home this one powerful idea. A nation's destiny is literally forged in the character of its leader. Humility and obedience to God, that brings blessing and prosperity. Pride and disobedience, that brings judgment and ruin. And that leaves us with this huge question, doesn't it? One that echoes way beyond the pages of this ancient book. If the core argument here is true, that the integrity, the wisdom, and the humility of just one leader can shape the fate of millions, then what is the true price of that leader's character? Well, if you ask the author of 2 Chronicles, the answer is everything.